a realist sees the light, the tunnel, and the next tunnel. And we are back with another episode in the Daily Vedantic. And today's episode is on optimism, pessimism, or realism. So I will often say this quote that to expect the worst is to be a pessimist, but to be prepared for the worst, that is philosophy. That is to be a philosopher. The world is described within Vedanta as opposites. The world is opposites. Or one phrase within the philosophy is world as opposites. That's what life and this experience is just opposites. The wheel goes up, the wheel goes down. Each downward motion implies an upward motion. It is similar to the Yin-Yang symbol. White implies black, black implies white. They're poles of a magnet, and poles of a magnet can do nothing but imply the other pole. You can't have one side of a coin. All of these different turns of phrase point at, within this philosophy and within Eastern philosophy, point at this notion. A little side note, the yin-yang symbol, some people think it's fish, but the origination of the symbol that a teacher once told me was that it's actually the overview of a mountain ridge. And a mountain cannot have just one side. One side where the light hits it and it's glistening in the sunlight and no dark side to it. A mountain can't rise out of the ground and just have one side to it. There are two sides to a mountain, and the illustration of the yin-yang is the overview of a mountain ridge. Similarly, the dark side of a mountain implies another side. But how does all this have to do with pessimism or optimism? Or a third approach of realism? Well, it's so often the case in our lives that when things are going really well, we think, oh, something might happen. Something bad's going to happen. It's not just mine, it's going to happen because my work life is going so well, my personal life, it's got to go to shit. Or the opposite, my personal life is going so great, but of course this stuff is happening at work right now because that's just what happens. That would be a misnomer, a misconception of this phrase. To be prepared for the worst is to be a philosopher. It's not to expect the worst. That is pessimism. It is to prepare for the worst because, well, a life prepared is a life well lived. You can handle all of the ups and downs if you've been preparing for them. The world as opposites. Not to expect the worst, but to be prepared for it. I heard another teacher once say that a pessimist sees the tunnel, but not the light at the end. An optimist sees the light, but not the tunnel. But a realist sees the light, the tunnel, and the next tunnel. This philosophy calls for us to not be selectively optimistic, not seeing the tunnel and only seeing the light. It doesn't call for us to only see the tunnel and not see the light and pessimistically view the world around us, but to see both. To see both, to prepare for both, and to see clearly. Because seeing clearly is what this philosophy is all about. That's what any philosophy is an attempt at. Clarity. And that is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.